So as promised, I'm making this video to kind of go over some of the history of the graphical changes in old school RuneScape, and then specifically the change to the Torva armor and the kind of feedback since the change, and the change also in the dev team's approach to polling art updates and visual updates. So going back in time here, probably one of the biggest graphical updates in old school RuneScape, one of the first controversial graphical updates, and for all those who were playing will remember this, was the change to the elf models when Song of the Elves, before Song of the Elves came out. So this was back in 2019. Mod G made these changes. Former artist on the JMod team, no longer at Jagex, and she received a lot of backlash for these changes, and I think a lot of it was probably warranted. I think these changes were widely disliked, and in fact, some of them were walked back partially as well due to player feedback being so negative. So, the biggest offender here, I would say, is the Elena update. So Elena has had, as you can see, four different models for both the character and the chat box. So the original model, this was pre 07 scape, and this was an older. They had the older body type models, older character models, as you can see, different hairstyle as well for the character. And this was changed before 07 scape came out in 2005 to this model, which was the model for Elena up until the 2019 changes. So for around 14 years, the character had this model, and in my opinion, this is kind of quintessential old school RuneScape. We play a game that's based on older graphical, an older graphical style. We're not playing the old school RuneScape. Does not try and should not try to be the best graphical game. Really, but what it should do is to try to encapsulate the character of the game, which is it's rooted within these simplistic character models, lower detail, lower quality, some might say, but it's part of the appeal to the game. And we interact with this game visually, and the visual style, and especially having a consistent visual style is important. If you were to just change the graphics of the game overnight, it would completely change how the players feel about the game. I mean, it would change the way the game looks, which is an important part of kind of what the game makes you feel when you're playing it. So this was the Elena model for years until the update before Song of the Elves, when it was changed here. So you can see, just going off of looking at the previous model, is completely different. The quality is much higher. I mean, you can see there's shading on the clothing. That's something that's not in any sort of that's something that's not in any other character. You can see the necklace here as well. When the older character had, this just looks like a ruby necklace or something, right? Like this is a necklace, a character, you can wear this necklace in the game with the exact same model. Versus here, everything's custom. These are all custom models. This necklace model does not exist anywhere in the game. The face model does not exist. No other NPC in the game's face looks like that. No other NPC in the game's body looks like this. Has this kind of shading on the torso. This is a completely customized character, and when you have one character or a subset of characters, I believe there are a couple that were updated for this, but when you have a couple characters that look completely different than the rest of the game, it kind of takes you out of the artistic style of the game, and it just becomes an eyesore. It's something that's different. It stands out in a negative way every time you interact with it. So this model was actually so poorly received that it was updated here to this is now the current model of Elena. As you can see, there's not any difference on the physical model. It's the chat box here. So the chat head, the original chat head, as you can see, there was no change in the chat head when they changed the body model, and this is consistent with other chat heads, other characters in the game. And then you see here, this is the kind of everything's customized. The face is very angular. The eyes are completely different than any other model in the game. And the feedback was so negative that it was eventually pulled and then changed to this, which is the current day model. As you can see, it's still slightly different than other character models in the game, but it's not so different that it takes you completely out. It doesn't, become some sort of an eyesore or something that stands out majorly here. It still is similar enough to other character models where, yeah, I think this change was good. Do I think they needed to change it at all? No, I think this model here would have been perfectly fine, and yeah, I think that it comes from the changing of the model comes from a false idea on Jagex's part on why people play this game. I think maybe some of the incentive was, well, we're releasing this big new quest. Song of the Elves was one of the first big Grandmaster quests in the game. And so as a part of it, we want to update the models to be more appealing to new players because, when Jagex releases big updates like this, one of the big incentives for them is to get new players excited and playing the game, which makes sense. They're investing this time and resources into these new updates. They want these new updates to drive player engagement. But I don't think the graphics, the actual graphical look of the characters and the world, that's not what's driving, and that's never been what's driven people to old school RuneScape. People don't play this game because the characters look the best and the graphics are the best. And so, when you have a game that has this graphical style, trying to bring players in by making those graphics looking shinier and more appealing, but also only a certain subset of that, it comes from a misunderstanding on Jagex's part. And looking through, like I said, Elena was not the only one that had these changes. So this is Elenud. I don't know how you say it, but as you can see here, change from 2005 from the original to 2005. They added this tiara, and this was the body. This is the character originally, and then it was changed with the release of Song of the Elves. Here, again, everything's customized. There's shading here that doesn't exist in any other character. This is completely different face. And, I understand the desire. You want elves to look different. Give them pointy ears. That's fine. But they have pointy ears, as you can see here on the original model. So you still have some distinguishing features here. But now when you're adding this kind of complexity in shading and in character modeling and in body modeling, face modeling, adding more detail to one subset of characters or NPCs in the game and not touching any of the others. This is where it really just becomes, it takes you out of the game. You say, why does this NPC look totally different? And it comes back to my original point. I think that in changing these by thinking that it would appeal to new players, I think it actually it does the opposite. It's unappealing to new players. You have someone new coming in the game and they say, okay, this is an older, this game is based on the older RuneScape, which they're probably familiar with. So, you have a nostalgia factor, and I think, no one would argue that the nostalgia factor isn't important in getting people to try the game. Obviously, the nostalgia factor is not what we should rely on to have people continue to play the game and to keep enjoying the game, but it definitely is a key in getting people to come back to the game. And, oh, I played this game, and it looks like it did when I was a kid, and that makes you feel a certain way. It makes you, it takes you back to the memories of playing old school RuneScape as a kid and enjoying it. But then when you go and you're playing the new quest and you see these elves that look completely different, you all of a sudden are kind of taken aback. You're like, wait, why does this look so weird and nothing else? Everything else is how I remember it, but this is different and weird and strange. And I think that is unappealing to new players. So I think it gives the opposite effect. As you can see, the chat box head also was updated as well with the poll. It still is much more detailed than other NPCs in the game. Again, Lord Ireworth, similarly, I think his body type is probably the biggest offender. This just it's something about it. It just looks completely it just doesn't fit the character of the graphical style of the game. Looking like this is what, and I understand. I'm not saying that you can't update this, right? I'm not saying that you can't change the graphical style of this NPC before the quest, but when you make it into completely different than any other NPC in the game and different faces, different body. Everything's custom. Again, everything is custom about this NPC, and that's what really makes it so it takes you out of the world. So again, there are other updates as well that have gone through artistic wise, other than Torva. Big one is the lava dragon. So if you remember the original lava dragons, this is how they looked. They had the actual animation effect of like the flowing lava, similar to the fire cape. And I mean, I think this dragon, look, it's beautiful. I think this is kind of quintessential old school. I don't think there's anything wrong with it. There's detail in the dragon. I think that the animation effects are it's part of what appeals to people. I mean, you think of what are the most iconic old school RuneScape items, the Abyssal Whip, but the Fire Cape. The Fire Cape is certainly up there, and it's because of it's one of the few items in the game with that animation effect. And I think giving that animation effect to the dragons was also a big factor. So the team then decided to propose this change. This was met with heavily negative backlash. And so eventually the team implemented this change here. So this is now the current model of Lava Dragon. And again, I think the point kind of just becomes like, why? Why did we need to change it at all? I can understand, with the release of a new quest, and you have one of the main characters looks, almost indistinguishable from like a woman in Lumbridge. I can understand there the desire to update that model and to make that look different. But with here, I don't see anything wrong with this. I mean, this is consistent with every other kind of dragon model in the game. And again, it comes back to the point, now that you update this, but every other dragon looks the same. Now, lava dragons look completely different than any other dragon in the game, and you just sit there and wonder, like, why are these different? You're a new player, you go to the wilderness, like, why are these dragons so different than everything else? And it just becomes a question, and it takes you out of that immersion of the game. So then going into Torva, so as a precursor here, the big the big change to polling that came a few years ago after the Song of the Elves quest, but before the change of the Torva model. Here is a snippet from the change to the polling charter, and part of this was the lowering of the yes threshold from 75 to 70%, and then another part of this was a change in what was being polled. So as you can see here, leagues in dead men mode will not be polled. So I can understand that, not polling Christmas events, Halloween events, temporary events. That's understandable. And then item rewards, character models, environmental assets are part of the asset visuals and UI graphical enhancements that were no longer are no longer polled as a result of this change. And the reasoning here, Jagex gives, in-game visuals can often become a sticking point which holds back new content from being released into the game while the preferred design is discussed. It is a time-consuming process which still leaves huge portions of the community dissatisfied. And then they go on to explain more. We're still keeping the old school style, and sharing example imagery, and still having the back and forth process. But as you can see here, the only reasoning they give for this is they were afraid that it would hold the release of new content. So new content is polled, but it maybe fails the poll because not because people don't like the content or the rewards, but they don't like how the rewards look. So they vote no because they want the look of the rewards to be changed, and then that pushes back the release date of the content. I understand the reasoning. I think it's perfectly fine. If perfectly fine under the assumption that they were to hold that same reasoning and that line of logic. I don't see why, just because you're saying we're not going to pull items because we don't want content to be pushed back. Well, what about existing content like Torva is? Why does that mean we can no longer pull any new graphical updates? So I think that's kind of the sticking point. And then going into Torva. So Torva, the original model for Torva here. This is based on the original RS2 Torva. As you can see here, we've got it's a fairly complex armor set compared to others, as they mentioned during the poll during the blog when they discussed changing of Torva. The most iconic part to me of Torva is certainly the helmet design, and kind of this stormtrooper design. And I think the shoulder pads, the spikiness and the width. You see like Torva is it's a bulky armor set. Torva has the highest defense bonuses, in the game. It's a bulky set. It's heavy, and you look at it and it looks heavy. It looks like a warrior, clad in big, steel plates, and who, he would kind of have a little trouble running around and doing a bunch of stuff like that. But if you put a sword in his hand and you had to fight him, sword combat, then he would, he'd hold his own. He's got weight. The armor has weight to it, and then it's kind of capped off by this unique face design that's like it's menacing, right? He's got the eyes. He's angry. The mouth hole. There's like a menacing factor to it, and it's like this evil like this evil armor that has this power and this weight behind it. I think it gave a feel to the armor set that then. And I think from the start, the art teams never liked Torva. It came into the game from the next update, obviously before Old School RuneScape, and this was kind of the original proposed version, which was again similar. They did a little work here on the face. You can see some of the shading here. They took some of that off. But for the most part, it's pretty similar to how it came into the game originally. And I think the art teams always hated that. I think in general, any backports where the art team isn't able to have any say in how it looks, I think they automatically assume that means it's worse because it was made by someone else. And I think that's a pretty common assumption from really any lines of work, right? You come into a job and you look at what this guy did before I came here. This sucks. I'm going to change it, completely because my way is better. I think that's a fallacy. It's not always true. Just because the person, did it before you doesn't mean that they were worse at it than you, or that you have to change everything to kind of match your style here. So with Torva, it was released, and then soon after they tried to pull changing Torva. So as you can see on the left here, this is their quote unquote simplified Torva design, and this was actually going to be pulled. I think it's funny, they say simplified, but you look, I mean, some of it, there's added complexity here on the proposed version. You look at the leg detail here. There's much more detail on the leg set on the quote unquote simplified version than there was on the original. And even on the face, you can look and you can see like the look at all the like the polygons and everything that's going on with the face mask on the proposed simplified version. I don't think any part of this is simplified, to be honest. So I think it's funny that they pitched it as a simplified version, but this was gonna be pulled, and it was in the blog. And again, the feedback was negative, and it was so negative that they actually removed it from the poll entirely. So this was never pulled, and when Torva was kept the way it was until eventually when the update came through that no longer required the art team to poll any designs. Then we got the Desert Treasure 2 blog. So this is on the release of Desert Treasure 2. Obviously here they are discussing this is the addition of Blorva to the game. And I think as a side note, a lot of people don't care about the look of Torva because Blorva's in the game. And I understand. I have Blorva myself, and I use the Blorva set, and I think it's a very beautiful set. And I think I can't remember the mod who did it. I do know they're no longer with Jagex. They actually kind of made this design as like a parting gift before they left the company. But I think they did a phenomenal job with the design. I think Blorva looks great. But I don't think that's discounts the fact that Torva was fine in its original state and didn't need to be changed. And I think that the mod team, they lied. Obviously, they lied about the why they made the decision to no longer require changing Torva, because obviously changing the look of armor that's already been in the game for years isn't pushing back any new content updates, right? That's not hurting new content from passing the poll, which was the reasoning they gave on no longer requiring art changes to be pulled. So that was just, it was not true. That wasn't the only reason they wanted to stop requiring art changes to be pulled. So going through, they talk about the art in Torva. It was backported, and our artists immediately noticed. And this is what I was saying earlier: is it came into the game, from people who didn't design it, and lo and behold, an artist doesn't like something that they didn't make and that someone else made, and now that they have to deal with. So that's not a very uncommon occurrence. So as you can see, the reasoning here, as you see, you can see the issue at hand. From a comparison here side by side, I don't think Torva sticks out nearly as much of as a sore thumb as I think. I mean, if you look at the shoulder plates on the Justice Car armor set versus the Torva, they're very similar. And then even like on the Bando set with all the spikes coming out, and look at how involved like the wrist guards are on the set and everything. Versus Torva just has kind of the normal cufflinks. I don't think that Torva is necessarily any more complex, just from a visual perspective, than these other sets that they're trying to show a huge comparison to. So they say a 3D map on the vertex, and Torva's model pushed its vertex grid to its limits, leaving little room for further additions, even if we think they're required. I think that's a lame excuse. So are you saying that you couldn't add anything else because you're at like the vertex limit? I think there are ways to subtly change the armor set. Maybe take out some of the detailing on the shoulder pads, some of the detailing on the arms. I mean, the legs, like I said, I don't think there's that much detailing going on here, but you could take out, kind of this like layering here on the leg plates. You could remove some of that, and all of a sudden you've cleared up some of these quote unquote vertexes that have become the limiting factor. So going through, they show their proposal, and now we have what is the new and current version of Torva. So just kind of comparing to the original here, and going back and kind of looking at it compared to the original. You look at the arm set here, and the body. Like I said, they remove some of the detailing here. They remove, some of the layering on the legs. That's fine. The biggest, I would say, the biggest gripe people have with the change to Torva, and certainly the biggest gripe I have with the change to Torva, is the change in the helm design. I thought the old, Stormtrooper helm with that kind of menacing face, it was iconic, and it was certainly a unique, and it gave Torva a unique set and made it stand out as a best set of armor. Versus now, this just looks generic. It's just a generic knight helm, with these purple eyes. But from the in-game perspective, nothing about this looks unique to any other like knight armor you would expect in the game. I think they ruined kind of the character of Torva and the uniqueness of Torva with that. And so then kind of going into the present day, obviously there's been backlash from people, myself included, but others, on the design of Torva, and a desire to go back to the original set and more of an original look. And I think this Twitter thread here is it's important to look. Originally I had posted on the Lava Dragon change here, talking about how the art team's just changing things, really, like I said, for no reason. And Mod Skylark of the art team weighed in on this. They said the intention was to make the graphics fit better with the rest of the game. I don't I don't see how changing the helmet look makes it fit in any better with the rest of the game, other than it now no longer looks unique at all. So if that was their desires, to make it look boring, then I guess you've done that. And then you look here at some of the others, and this is kind of my biggest issue with the whole thing. So Mod Skylark says, we discussed, but also we implemented Torva as an ornament kit, so it didn't feel necessary. If enough people genuinely wanted it, we'd at least have the discussion again, as it's been in the game for a while. And I think that's a good idea to have, is that, this is, at its root, Old School RuneScape is a community-driven game. This is a game that's always been, all the updates have always been polled, and obviously we've gone away from that a little bit, especially in the art department, but that doesn't mean that the community shouldn't have a say. And I brought up the point. I think people do generally want it, and especially there's not really there's not really any sort of medium for people to discuss this other than what people would qualify as bitching on Twitter. That's really the only way. If you're not happy, it's not like Jagex is running polls, and they never, that goes back to the point when they made the change. They never polled the player base. Do you guys like the original, or would you like to change it? And in fact, the one time they were going to poll it, the feedback was so negative they didn't even bother. So we really have never gotten the player feedback on what they would like Torva to look like. And if the player base was happy with the original design. And then this is kind of the part that's really the most troubling, is after saying if enough people wanted it, we'd have the discussion again. But then after talking with it a number of times with the art team, we're all in agreement that we're happy with the updated version, so there's no plans to change it. All I can suggest is using HDOS if you prefer that style. So after saying if the player base wants it, we'd have the discussion, you were then hit with, oh, actually, the art team talked about it. We like it, so we don't care. We're not changing it. If you don't like it, go play another client. This right here, this is the issue. This is really the issue at hand. Is you have a subset of players, and I think there are more players who do enjoy the look of the old Torva set and miss the old Torva look, who just aren't as vocal about it. But really their opinions are being discarded because the art team just doesn't care enough to pull it, to put it up, or to admit that maybe they were wrong and that the players like the other version more. And then they're told to pound sand. So kind of going through further, why can't we get a cosmetic? Nostalgia is the biggest factor. If you don't like the design, there's Blorva and the potential for more ornament kits in the future. I mean, the biggest is I like the helmet design. I would love to see a Torva variant with the original, or with a similar design to the original helmet, with the separate eye slot and mouth slot, with that menacing face and menacing look. It gives it a weight behind it. The helmet looked like a big helmet, like a powerful, like heavy full helm there. Versus the current one just looks like a tin, just like a little tin bucket you put over your head. So going through, there's a little more back and forth here. There's some more back and forth, and I think the idea, use HDOS because it has the old Torva. This is a horrible this is just a horrible argument. HDOS has such little functionality, especially on a high level PVM base, which is if you're using Torva, you're doing PVM at a pretty high level, most likely. And HDOS lacks so much of that functionality. It's really, I mean, for raids, like for Tob, it's completely unusable because it lacks the party plugin. So saying, use this other inferior client because you like the look is just a cop-out answer. So then there's some, posts, and there is some more back and forth here. Really nothing. This has been the only feedback, and the only this has been the only communication we've had from the art team on Torva and on changing it here. And then this is also what I think, kind of going back. Mod Grub also had the comment, adding back the Torva undermines the initiative. I don't think that's true. You can add back a more similar version that still completes the initiative. And Yu-Gi-Oh, he comments on this well. And of course, there's no mod reply to this as well. But he says, we just want something that resembles it. The Stormtrooper helm was the face of the set. And I agree. This is really the heart of the set is the helmet here, and the change to the helmet. And he had a great, really, this is a great mock-up. An example I found of a simplified Torva version that still achieves the old school RuneScape's art team's desire to simplify the set and quote unquote complete their initiative, but also keep some of the most iconic versions of Torva alive here, with the change to the helm here. And I think something like this would be something I would love to see in the game personally. And I just hope by making this video, it gives the old school team, it shows them that people do care about this. Like Mod Skylark said, and hopefully, Although I don't think it's true because of the later comments. But if enough people did care, they would have the discussion to bring something like this into the game. And so I that's really what I'm trying to achieve by this video is showing that people do care. The art of this game is important, and people do care about Old Torva, and they do care enough to have this discussion. So if you've stayed this long, you're probably crazy because you just listened to me talk about old school RuneScape art changes for 30 minutes, but I do appreciate it a lot. Thank you so much, guys, and have a great day.